Once you have tasted flight, you will forever walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward, for there you have been, and there you will always long to return. This is how the famous painter and philosopher Leonardo da Vinci described air transport. Welcome to this new episode on Scientific Tourism Without Boundaries. In this specific episode, we are looking at air transport development in Nigeria and, of course, its impact on tourism. Man's dynamic nature is represented in his spatial activity. These activities, whether social, economic, or political, is coordinated by a factor known as exchange. Exchange is the basis of interaction at any level and involves movement of people, goods, or services to and from destinations. This movement of people and goods from place to place is known as transportation. It is essential in bringing about the integration of regions and nations into a single world community now known as globalization. Technically speaking, therefore, transportation is the physical mechanism of exchange carried out by various modes by which goods, ideas, information, services, and more importantly, people pass from place to place. Transport movement is combined into various systems and networks modes, consists of land, water, and air, and are carried out by such means as automobiles, airplanes, rail, that is trains, ships and boats, and pipelines. Few economic activity are located where they are really needed, and people like to move, interact, and change location. To satisfy this derived need, transportation is most necessary. Hence, the transport geography Mayer could really not have been more correct when he asserted that since any form of activity involves movement of things, people, and services, transport is indispensable to man. Generally, transportation as a concept was always in existence as man could walk from place to place on his feet. Primeval transport comprised of carrying loads by head and utilization of animals of burden like donkeys, horses, asses, and oxen, even elephants. Increased demand for transportation avenues arose from expanded trade and commerce, as well as the demand and setting up of industries, the Industrial Revolution. The discovery and development of the wheel as a phenomenon revolutionized transport, and eventually automation was achieved by the invention of the combustion engine in the early 18th century. Steam engines and steel-propelled vehicles were produced, and ships were also powered by giant engine-driven wheels. At the onset of the last century, air transport was discovered and developed. This mode involved the design and operation of aircraft and airports for passengers and cargo. It also involved traffic control, which implies meteorological services. This is a vital aspect of aviation. As a means of transport, air transport is very advanced and has various advantages over other modes, the most advantageous of which is time savings and bridging of long distances. The fact that all humanity and all activity are distributed in space makes transportation, the bridging of space, necessary. The conquest of the airspace as a medium of transportation is one of the outstanding achievements of modern times. Welcome to Shantafrique, tourism without boundaries. Man first flew in a balloon. This was an invention made in 1783 by the French, and at the time it was believed that a lighter-than-air aircraft known as an aerostat could make man flight a possibility. On the 19th of September 1789, a gentleman known as Joseph Montgolfier released from the Great Court of Versailles a large aerostat carrying a sheep, a rooster, and a duck as passengers. This contraption flew and returned to Earth with its passengers alive. The first manned flight was accomplished on 21st November 1783 and triggered a worldwide interest, understandably, for the wish to fly had been as old as mankind. The Greek mythology recorded what is known as the flight of Icarus, a gentleman who made wings from feathers and wax, but took off from a mountain and flew too high and too close to the sun, which melted his wings, and he tumbles to his death. Towards the close of the 19th century, the Brazilian-born scientist Albert Santos Dumont developed a heavier-than-air machine. By the turn of the 20th century, most of the problems which beset aeronautics as a science had been solved, culminating in the historical first flight at Kitty Hawk, Ohio-Dayton, USA, of the Wright brothers Wilbur and Orville on the 17th of December 1903. This was marked as the first controlled successful flight of a heavier-than-air machine. This success, the result of experiment and observation, has been called one of the greatest inventions in modern times, especially in transportation and communication. The accomplishment heralded a superlative mode of transport that introduced a novelty to movement and interaction on most spheres of human activity. Improvement in technology has continued over the years, and now aircrafts of various sorts under various companies, for instance Boeing Group of Companies, Vickers, de Havilland, Douglas, are manufactured and operated scheduled flights from airports all over the world. The aeroplane as a mode of transport is classified as a flow. It is distinguished, among other things, by its advantages of speed. For instance, Concorde supersonic jet used to travel at a cruise speed of 1,200 kilometers per hour. Other advantages include freedom from natural configuration of relief on the Earth's surface, like hills and mountains and forests. The advantages of air transport and other modes will be discussed later in this discourse. Transport facilities generally have a significant role to play in the progress of economic development of any country, and demand for transport in general is derived from the need for people and goods to be at different places at different times in order to fulfill economic activity in space. The importance of air transport as a whole and its relevance in development is depicted in the heavy investment by virtually every known country in establishing their own airline. In its development plan, for instance, for 1975 to 1980 period in Nigerian government, 527.9 million naira was invested to upgrading airports in the country. Professor Michael Filani of the University of Ibadan of blessed memory asserted that the aircraft can provide that contact with established centers of population, which is essential to a country's economic development. According to Dr. Michael Ogbede of the University of Lagos, the landing of the Royal Air Force aircraft on a polo field in Maiduguri in 1920 marked the beginning of aviation practice in Nigeria. Air travel or commercial aviation, therefore, is comparatively new. It is an introduced technology from overseas, and actual aviation began when airfields in Kano, Lagos, and Maiduguri were completed following surveys carried out by the Imperial Airways in 1925 from the Gold Coast, now Ghana, eastwards on the Nile. A twin-engined de Havilland aircraft was the first aircraft that landed at Kano in services inaugurated between Nigeria and the Sudan by the Imperial Airways. 2 years later, this saw the development of the West Coast route from Lagos to Accra, Takoradi in Accra, Freetown in Sierra Leone, and Bathurst, which is now Banjul. The Imperial Airways then continued the operations of a once-weekly United Kingdom West African service via Khartoum, Sudan, up till 1940. Immediately after that, and before the end of the Second World War, the Royal Air Force Transport Command was operating a twice-weekly bush service from Accra to Lagos, Port Harcourt, Enugu, Jos, and Kano, returning direct to Accra via Kaduna and Lagos. However, this service ceased in 1946 When the Transport Command was withdrawn, the Nigerian government then reopened the same bush service using a DC-3 plane on charter from the British Overseas Airways Corporation (BOAC). These chartered aircraft were on the Accra, Lagos, Benin, Port Harcourt, Enugu, Jos, Kano and Kaduna routes twice weekly. The British Overseas Airways Corporation was undertaking all the ground servicing for the aircraft, and these chartered aircraft from them were still in use even after the West African Airways Corporation (WAAC) was formed in 1946, jointly by the four British colonies Nigeria, Gold Coast, which is now Ghana, Sierra Leone and Gambia. In 1947, the West African Airways Corporation took delivery of its first Dove aircraft, whose first scheduled flight by the corporation took place on October 28, 1947. By 1952, the West African Airways Corporation had 11 Doves and Bristol 170 Wayfarer aircraft. The West African Airways Corporation used the Bristol Wayfarer type of aircraft and operated a second economy class service known as the Flyer services. This service was a pioneer in low-cost air services, which was aimed at stimulating air travel and air-mindedness in our people. The service was initially scheduled for the corporations rooted in Ghana and later extended to Lagos, Port Harcourt, Calabar, and Kano. The Dove concentrated on the route along the coast from Lagos to Dakar with the slogan, "You too can fly." In 1957, the West African Airways Corporation acquired 7 DC aircraft, having sold off the Wayfarers and the Dove aircraft. Up to 1957, the West African Airways Corporation operated the Lagos-Khartoum route to provide easy communication between West and East Africa. But from that, it entered into the field of transatlantic flying with direct flight services from Lagos to London using Argonaut and Boeing Stratocruisers on charter from BOAC. The services, which started on a weekly basis, was increased to twice weekly in April 1958. On May 1st, 1959, the West African Airways Corporation, now the Nigeria Airways, came into existence following the dissolution of the West African Airways Corporation in 1958. And graduating from the use of such aircraft such as Doves, Herons, DC-3 and Piper Aztecs, the Natural Airline took the plunge into modern aviation business by acquiring medium and long-range jets. At first, it was the Fokker 27 turboprops, followed by its and more comfortable equivalent, the Fokker 28. Within a short time, the airline had become the proud owner of Boeing Stratocruisers 707 and 737. As the business expanded, Nigeria Airways entered into a charter agreement with BOAC, and eventually a Vickers VC-10 jet joined the fleet. In 1970, after the Civil War, the federal government launched a successful reconstruction program which included expansion in the Nigeria Airways and improvement and building of more airports in the country. Although Nigeria Airways had its heart in Africa's most populous nation, its activities stretched far beyond Nigeria itself. Its routes reached all across West Africa: Kenya, Jeddah, Karachi, Amsterdam, Italy, the United Kingdom, and all over the Atlantic to North America. In all, the airline is rated among the world's best and well-organized airlines, with comprehensive routes internationally and to a lesser extent on domestic services. Dear viewers, we have come to the conclusion of this first part of aviation development in Nigeria and impact on tourism. We are in it for the long haul because it's a long discourse. The importance of the aviation industry in any country cannot really be underestimated. And in Nigeria, the industry has been growing slowly but steadily since the colonial days till today. There are so many airports in Nigeria, some domestic, some international, and they generally generate revenue for every location they are found in. Aviation industry is exotic, it is luxurious, it is painstaking, and it is certainly guided by high-level science and must therefore be operated with mathematical certainty to avoid mishaps. Stay tuned to the next episode on Shunt of Tourism Without Boundaries. My name is Theodore Obichike.